Hey everyone, it's Kelly, and today we're going to talk about a case that happened in the Maquoketa Caves State Park campground in Iowa in 2022. Hey everyone, I just wanted to let you know before we get started that this is a pretty tough case to listen to. There are children involved. It's very sad. So if that's something that's going to be triggering to you, you might want to sit this one out. It was a really tough case for me to cover, but it's an important story to be told. So let's get right to it.
A family camping trip turned into an unthinkable tragedy after a gunman murdered 3 members of a family. The sole survivor is a 9-year-old boy. As Amber Cagliano reports, the question is why?
A family massacre. The mom, dad, and daughter shot to death. The only survivor, a 9-year-old boy who ran for help.
The report of a child that went to another camper said that there was a possible shooting in his camper. Parents are in there.
A campgoer says she saw the little boy after the shooting.
He's just standing there, like just calm and nothing out of the ordinary. Other than he had one shoe on and was in his pajamas, but not being held or comforted or showing any emotion.
They were a beautiful family vacationing at a campground in Iowa. Authorities say they were in a tent when an intruder entered and fatally gunned down 42-year-old Tyler Schmidt, his wife Sarah, and 6-year-old litlle.
Stranger wearing all black got in the tent, had some sort of a small gun, and he took off running.
Reports of the shooting prompted authorities to quickly shut down the camp. When they did a roll call, they say they quickly discovered someone missing. It was the suspect. The body of 23-year-old Anthony Orlando Sherwin was discovered with a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
A random act of violence. There was no correlation or no relationship between Anthony Sherwin and the Schmidt family that we've come across.
The Slain family is from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Mom worked at the local library. Inside Edition spoke to the mom's brother, Adam Morehouse.
I'm sure that most of us are in the several levels of shock phase of disbelief, and those waves come and go as with every human, between disbelief and sadness, followed by anger, followed by more disbelief.
He is calling for people to rally around the young survivor, Arlo.
How is Arlo doing?
He's a strong little boy, but it's important to note that he has a lot of struggles that he's going to have to overcome forever now.
The mayor of Cedar Falls, where the family's from, says he's devastated by the murders and confirms the 9-year-old is now safe. Police are still trying to determine a motive for the shootings.
On July 22nd, 2022, 2 gunshots were heard at the Maquoketa Caves State Park in Jackson County, Iowa. A little boy ran with all of his might through the dewy grass with only one shoe on to the first person he found awake, Cecilia Sherwin, who had been staying at the campsite next to his family. Sherwin was just returning to her tent after an early morning walk with her husband. The little boy pleaded for help, saying that his parents had been shot and that there was blood. As the sun was rising at 6:23 a.m. Friday morning, a call was made to 911.
News 8 obtained a copy of the 911 call that reported the incident through a Freedom of Information Act request. Tonight, News 8's Jenna Webster joins us in studio to break down what happened during that 23-minute phone call.
Yeah, John, police say the shooting happened just before 6:30 a.m. the morning of July 22nd at the campground, leaving 3 members of the Schmidt family from Cedar Falls dead. We do want to warn you, the 911 call we obtained includes the surviving member of the Schmidt family, a 9-year-old boy, describing what he saw that morning.
Jackson County 911, where's your emergency?
Maquoketa Caves.
Maquoketa Caves?
Yeah.
Okay, what's going on out there?
Shooting.
The 911 call to Jackson County Dispatch July 22nd was set in motion by a 9-year-old boy who ran to a woman for help in the campground, saying something happened to his parents.
And he said that his parents were shot in the blood. Oh, I don't know if that's his fault. He doesn't know if they're shot, but scary.
2 minutes in, the dispatcher puts her on hold. and attempts to call a park ranger, but gets a voicemail.
Come on.
10 minutes in, he gets back on the phone, later asking the boy, named Arlo, questions. He says he was camping with his mom, dad, and sister.
I woke up and there was someone in black clothes, and they had a weapon, and my sister was screaming.
Arlo says he doesn't know who the man in black clothes was.
Did you hear any shots, or what kind of weapon did he have?
I think it was some kind of small gun.
Police later found Arlo's parents, Sarah and Tyler Schmidt, and his sister, 6-year-old Litlle, dead in their tent near the entrance to the upper campground. Another body was found nearby, Anthony Sherwin, who police say was the man in black clothes who killed the Schmidts. Sherwin's mother,
What is your name?
Cecilia Sherwin.
the one who made the 911 call, not knowing her son had died or that he would be the suspect.
You're the park ranger?
Okay, you go ahead and talk to him, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
The Iowa Division of Criminal Investigations had previously revealed that Tyler Schmidt was shot and stabbed, Sarah Schmidt was stabbed, and Litlle was shot and strangled. The motive for the shooting is still unknown at this time.
Cecilia Sherwin's call revealed the details of what they would soon find out was a triple homicide. Other than this 911 call, though, investigators have disclosed very few facts about this case over the past several months, and many details about what actually happened that tragic morning are still a mystery. Cecilia Sherwin had difficulty pronouncing the name Maquoketa, which is a name derived from Maquoketa, which means Bear River in the Meskwaki tribe's native tongue.
Maquoketa Caves.
Maquoketa Caves?
Yeah.
The Jackson County 911 dispatcher quickly realized she was referring to the Maquoketa Caves State Park, which is a very popular summertime destination for campers, picnickers, and hikers. Cecilia Sherwin's 911 call lasted for 23 minutes. During this time, the dispatcher asked Sherwin questions and attempted to contact law enforcement. However, the park ranger's phone just kept ringing without any answer. The 911 dispatcher and Sherwin initially had a brief loss of connection, but she called back. The dispatcher put her on hold while he attempted to contact help. After nearly 10 minutes, the dispatcher asked more questions, such as where in the park Sherwin was located exactly. Cecilia Sherwin handed her phone to the scared but calm little boy so the 911 dispatcher could gather info from him. After a few more questions, the little boy provided more details as to what was happening.
We hear tonight from the woman who made the 911 call moments after last year's triple murder-suicide at Maquoketa Caves State Park. That call made by the killer's mother.
That's right. We hear her on the phone. She's talking with the boy whose parents and sister were killed by her son. That is tonight's top story. It was the only 911 call made on the morning of July 22nd. 3 members of the Schmidt family were murdered in their tent by 23-year-old Anthony Sherwin. Police say Sherwin killed himself a short time later.
9-year-old Arlo Schmidt was the only one in his family who survived. Fox 18's Trey Harris reports the phone call provides more information about what happened at the park than what came from investigators over the last 6 months.
Jackson County 911, where's your emergency?
Cecilia Sherwin is the mother of Maquoketa Caves killer Anthony Sherwin. She's also the lone caller who brought police to the scene the morning of the triple murder-suicide.
There's only one entrance, right?
Yeah, so it's going to be in the campground where you, as you enter, you turn left.
We'll show them.
You'll show them, okay.
9-year-old Arlo Schmidt was with her as she made the calls moments after he ran for help when his family was killed. Sherwin told the dispatcher they heard gunshots.
What's his name?
Running out screaming, Arlo. He was up screaming in the tent. And we heard the shot, so we
okay, it's a
ran out the house and nobody came out, but nobody came out, so we went up toward the end and kept taking him away.
At one point, they lost connection. The dispatcher put her on hold to get a hold of the park rangers and sheriff's office. Sherwin called back.
Yeah, this is sheriff's office. Have you found out anything else now?
No, we're going to get...
Okay. Where are you exactly at up there in the campground?
At the entrance.
You're at the entrance?
With the little boy.
The dispatcher also had questions for Arlo.
Who is in the tent?
Me and my mother, my my sister and my dad.
So what happened in there?
I woke up and there was like someone in like black clothes, and they had a weapon, and my sister was screaming. I think they were hurt.
You think they were hurt?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you hear any shots, or what kind of weapon did he have?
I think it was some kind of small gun.
Investigators have never said why they think this happened, but have closed the case. Trey Harris, Fox 18 News.
After 23 minutes, the 911 call ended with the arrival of a park ranger. Arlo Schmidt is now being raised by extended family members.
When the 911 dispatcher asked Arlo where his father was, the boy replied, "I think they were hurt." Arlo informed the dispatcher that the assailant was a man wearing all black clothing and holding a small gun. The dispatcher reassured the callers that help was on its way, with both an Iowa State trooper and a park ranger nearby, as well as an ambulance standing by at the campground's visitor center. After 23 minutes, the 911 call would end when the park ranger finally arrived at the scene. It was clear that a peaceful camping trip to the Maquoketa Caves State Park was tragically cut short when authorities peered into the Schmidt's tent and discovered a grisly scene. Tyler and Sarah Schmidt, both 42 years old, and their 6-year-old daughter litlle had all been murdered. 2 weeks later, the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation would formally announce the causes of death. Tyler was shot and sustained multiple sharp force injuries. Sarah was stabbed. litlle was shot and strangled. Thankfully, but also tragically, 9-year-old Arlo was the only member of the family to escape from the tent without injury. There was another body found in the campground that morning, though, hours later. The body of a man who had dropped a gun on the ground near him. The man who was thought to be the Schmidt's killer.
The autopsies are finished for the 3 people killed at Iowa's Maquoketa Caves State Park and the man believed responsible for their deaths. The Iowa Department of Public Safety is saying all the evidence and known facts point towards 23-year-old Anthony Sherwin as the man who killed 3 members of the Schmidt family at the park and then shot himself. DPS also says Sherwin acted alone. The autopsies reveal the cause of death for the Schmidt family members to be more than gunshot wounds. Multiple sharp force injuries and strangulation are also listed. The Schmidt's 9-year-old son is alive after managing to escape the shooting.
23-year-old Anthony Orlando Sherwin had tagged along with his parents, Joe and Cecilia, on a week-and-a-half-long camping journey that took them to Michigan's Upper Peninsula. When the family, who lived in La Vista, Nebraska, began making their way back home, they decided to stop in Iowa for the weekend. When they arrived at the Maquoketa Caves State Park campground around 7 p.m. on Thursday, July 21st, they set up 2 tents. Cecilia and Joe would sleep in their own tent, and Anthony would sleep in the other one. The Schmidt family's campsite was the next one down from the Sherwins, and there were about 75 yards of undergrowth vegetation between the 2 sites. The 2 families were among about a dozen other campers at the Maquoketa Caves that night. The campground has 24 sites that are all located along a single stretch of road. Iowa itself is a very low crime state, and this area of Iowa in particular is known to be extremely safe. Campgrounds around Iowa are typically very friendly and happy places to be, and certainly not the usual scene for a quadruple homicide. So, what happened in the early morning hours of July 22nd? As detectives combed through the campground, they tried to put together the pieces of this puzzling mystery. The campground was evacuated and put on lockdown so that investigators could go through the list of registered campers to make sure everyone was accounted for. 3 members of the Schmidt family were dead. Everyone else was accounted for except one camper, Anthony Sherwin. Cecilia and Joe Sherwin told police they couldn't find their son anywhere, and they didn't know where he could be. One other camper, Felicia Coe, recalls the chaos in the hours after the murders.
This is awful. It's terrifying. It's our worst fear. It's, I think, every parent's worst fear.
Felicia Coe was camping at Maquoketa Caves State Park last week with her boyfriend and his 16-year-old and 11-year-old sons. She says Friday was supposed to be a beautiful day, exploring caves and nature, before it took a turn for the worst. She was talking with a friend who says she woke up to what sounded like a scream and fireworks.
I thought, well, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, people aren't shooting off fireworks, and my next thought was not somebody's murdering a family. I had no concern at that point.
Then 2 armed park rangers told them to get to the front of the park. She went to look for her boyfriend's teenage son, who had gone for a run earlier that morning. While searching, she noticed another little boy, who she later learned was 9-year-old Arlo. He had just survived an attack that left his mom, dad, and 6-year-old sister dead.
He's just standing there, like just calm and nothing out of the ordinary, other than he had one shoe on and was in his pajamas, but not being held or comforted or showing any emotion. I just can't imagine.
As of Sunday, police haven't released a motive for the tragedy, something Coe says has been difficult to process.
To feel like it almost could have happened. It was just a different sort of punch in the gut, a different sort of startling realization of the fragility of everything and how quick things just change.
Amanda Rooker, KCCI 8 News, Iowa's news leader.
Officers would find no connection between the victims and Sherwin other than that they were camping in the same vicinity. Detectives found Tyler, Sarah, and litlle Schmidt all dead inside their tent when they arrived, while Anthony Sherwin was found a slight distance away from the main camping area in the wooded area a few hours later around 11 a.m. By all accounts, it looked like Sherwin was the killer. But why? Tyler, Sarah, litlle, and Arlo Schmidt all lived in Cedar Falls, Iowa, about 90 minutes from their campsite. Anthony Sherwin and his parents lived in La Vista, Nebraska, about 5 hours from the Maquoketa campground and about 4 hours from the Schmidt family. They did not know each other, and there was nothing tying the families to one another. Let's talk a little bit about the Schmidt family and their life. Tyler, Sarah, litlle, and Arlo Schmidt were described as the quintessential Midwestern family of 4 that everyone looked up to. And this is according to Adam Morehouse, one of Sarah Schmidt's 3 siblings.
A man whose sister was one of the 3 people shot to death at Maquoketa Caves Friday speaks openly tonight. That's the top story at 6. A man, his wife, and their daughter are who police say were shot to death on the campgrounds Friday morning. Tyler, Sarah, and 6-year-old litlle Schmidt were found dead in their tent. Their 9-year-old son Arlo was with them on the trip, but he wasn't hurt. Sarah Schmidt's brother spoke with Local 4 News about them. Local 4's Matt Holderman has that story.
Right now, everybody's doing it as well as expected, dealing with severely tragic event.
Friday morning, July 22nd, Adam Morehouse and his family had their worlds turned upside down. Morehouse found out his sister, Sarah Schmidt, who was camping with her family at Maquoketa Caves State Park, had been killed by a gunman inside her tent, along with her husband Tyler and their 6-year-old daughter, litlle.
This was completely random. Nobody in either families knew anybody. We didn't know the suspect. The suspect didn't know us. We don't know of any interaction that occurred. It was simply this individual woke up that morning and decided to pick a tent and walk into that tent where my sister and her family was sleeping and never got a chance to wake up.
Morehouse says the Schmidt family were simply enjoying a family vacation at the park, doing what they loved, before becoming victims of the tragedy.
About a year and a half ago, they started camping for the first time, and the kids took to it immediately. So that was their thing that they loved to do as a family, was to get outside and be together.
But even with the unimaginably shocking news came a little bit of good news. Morehouse and his family found out Sarah and Tyler's 9-year-old son, Arlo, who was camping with them, survived the attack. And with their grief came a goal, to shower Arlo in as much love as possible.
We're able to basically deal with it however we possibly can, moving forward with the family, but at the same time ensuring that Arlo has the maximum amount of love and support that he can get while we're here.
The day after the murders, Morehouse and his family created a GoFundMe page for Arlo to give people a way to help if they wanted. In the 3 days since, it's accrued over $200,000 from over 4,000 donors, giving the family a little bit of light in the darkness.
The overwhelming support has just been incredible from friends and family throughout the country, on social media platforms, in person. The Cedar Falls area and the authorities here in the community have been incredible as well. The support that we've gotten has definitely helped and created a blanket of comfort for us.
Now, Morehouse says the family will continue taking time to grieve while awaiting more answers from investigators. Matt Holderman, Local 4 News.
Adam Morehouse says agents with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigations told him they hope to have a final report later this week.
Tyler Schmidt grew up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, where his parents still live. Sarah Schmidt was born in Kansas City, Missouri, and spent much of her childhood living near St. Louis. The couple attended Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri, then lived in Lawrence, Kansas, where Sarah Schmidt worked at the University of Kansas. Sarah was a graduate student in the school's biology department and also worked for Monarch Watch, which is a group that studies and researches monarch butterflies. In high school, Sarah was on the swim team, and she served as a student technical director for the school's theater department, according to the school's 1998 yearbook. She also played xylophone in the band. Tyler Schmidt was an IT software engineer. In 2018, the Schmidts moved to Cedar Falls, Iowa, where Sarah Schmidt worked for the library, and they had been active in the community ever since. Through her service at the library, Adam Morehouse, her brother, said that his sister met many people and affected so many lives with a smile on her face in and out of the library. Morehouse also said that the Schmidts loved the outdoors, and they had recently just gotten 4 pairs of snowshoes for Christmas. They loved family, they loved the outdoors, and they enjoyed hiking, according to Sarah's brother. Investigators said all the evidence collected around the scene at the Maquoketa Caves substantiates that Anthony Sherwin acted alone, but police have not revealed a motive for the killings. They do say, and they have said recently, that they think they've gotten a little closer to understanding the motive, but they have not released that information. And to add to the mystery, Anthony Sherwin's mother says it was not like her son to do something like this. Obviously, they always say that, but she says that there has to be somebody else at fault. So a little bit about the Sherwin family now. Anthony Sherwin's mother, Cecilia Sherwin, in a statement emailed to the Associated Press, described her son as kind, sensitive, an exceptional student, and an aspiring businessman. The local La Vista, Nebraska Police Department released records showing that it had no prior interactions with Anthony Sherwin except one, when he walked into the police station in July 2017 to report that someone had tried to use his insurance to get dental work done in Oklahoma. Sherwin later called the police back to inform them that his insurance company had mistakenly sent him someone else's bill. And in looking at the internet, there is really just nothing at all out there about anyone in the Sherwin family. Anthony Sherwin's mother participated in an email interview with the press where she states, and I quote, "We refuse to believe the news. We are deeply saddened as he had so much to live for and gave us no indication that anything was wrong." Cecilia Sherwin said her son was wearing green when she last saw him, not black as Arlo Schmidt described the assailant was wearing, and no black clothing was found in the area. She also said that they were legally traveling with a gun, which was located in a secure container at their campsite. When Joe and Cecilia arrived back to the campsite commotion, they informed authorities that Anthony was missing and they couldn't find him. They said they feared that he might have been killed by the man that the young boy had described. "We think Anthony might have sensed trouble and grabbed the gun for safety," Cecilia Sherwin said. Cecilia Sherwin said in her email that her family had recently made the decision to become gun owners only after a number of recent crimes and disturbances while they were previously camping. "Neither I, my husband, nor Anthony had any experience with handguns before this year. We took classes and joined a range. Anthony was very responsible and showed no interest in hurting anyone and never hurt an animal in his life. Anthony gave us no warning that he was planning anything of this sort. Anthony was not capable of this type of violence." End quote. Officials didn't say if Anthony Sherwin had a firearms permit, but Iowa does allow people with permits to carry firearms virtually anywhere in the state. The press reported that officials provided no information about the firearm that was used to kill the Schmidts. The gun that was found near Anthony Schmidt's body was called a ghost gun. Ghost guns are untraceable weapons that can be made with parts bought at a store or online.
Ghost guns are untraceable firearms made from parts bought online. The Atlanta criminal defense lawyer that we spoke to for the story, he says you don't have to be of a certain age to buy the parts online.
Federal law right now does not control or cover ghost guns. And so no matter who you are, if you're a child, if you're a convicted felon, if you're a terrorist, you can go online and purchase these parts, get the parts, construct a firearm, even though it would have been illegal for you to possess that firearm if you went to the store and tried to purchase it.
11 Alive legal analyst Paige Pate says it's a federal crime to scratch off a serial number from a firearm. But there's a loophole with ghost guns, since they're made without a serial number and are sold as just parts.
Under federal law, the part for a firearm is not a firearm. And federal law only regulates firearms. Now, there's an exception if it's an automatic weapon. A part of a machine gun is still a machine gun. But for a regular firearm, a semi-automatic firearm, a part is not the firearm.
President Joe Biden proposed measures to curb gun violence in the spring. One of them would direct the ATF to classify gun kits as firearms. Public comment for that measure ended in August, but the agency still hasn't acted. Coming up at 6, Pate's message to parents.
President Biden has taken steps to try to ban ghost guns and information online about how to make them. Now, here's where a lot of confusion and mystery comes in. I've read numerous articles and reports about this case, and there is one very thorough and extensive article written by Barb Ikes of the Quad City Times, and I'm going to be reading directly from that right now. So I wanted to make sure I give this journalist credit for her work here, and I've also linked to her article in the show notes. So if you'd like to research more on this case, you can do that. So listen to this. Anthony Sherwin's parents are devastated by the loss of life that occurred that summer day while they were camping, but they don't think their son is to blame for the murders, and they don't think Sherwin killed himself. According to Cecilia Sherwin, neither his character nor the bit of evidence shared with them proves he did it. Cecilia Sherwin said her son sustained 2 gunshot wounds. She thinks the first would have been debilitating, and she wonders how he could have managed to shoot himself again. Police have declined to answer any questions and have not publicly released any additional information since August 4th, 2022. Public records requests made by reporters and the Sherwin family have been denied. The list of unanswered questions is long, but one in particular bothers Cecilia Sherwin because it seems simple to answer. Was the gun that police say was used by her son to kill himself the same gun that was used in the shootings of Tyler and litlle Schmidt? She and her husband specifically asked one of the lead investigators whether a ballistics match was made. They didn't get an answer, she said. The Quad City Times newspaper also filed requests for public records for that under Iowa's Open Records Law and the Freedom of Information Act. The request sought incident reports, investigative documents, crime scene summaries, and autopsy reports. The records you seek are not public, replied Debbie McClung, Strategic Communications Bureau Chief with the Iowa Department of Public Safety. We can share immediate facts and circumstances of this case, which are contained in the press release links which I've provided for you. McClung was asked in an email January 11, 2022, whether the gun used in the suicide matched the one used in the slayings. She didn't respond. The Sherwins' requests for information also have either been denied or ignored, Cecilia Sherwin said. She was able to independently obtain her son's autopsy report, she said, but it only added to her confusion. She knew that Anthony was wearing green shorts because she had given them to him the day before the shooting while she was handing out the last of the clean clothes from the family's camping trip. The autopsy listed the clothing that Anthony was wearing, which included green shorts. To the Sherwins, the clothing distinction is very important because little Arlo Schmidt had said that the person who killed his family was wearing all black clothing. Cecilia Sherwin said, "The reason we want the final report is that we want an independent review of what they say has happened because we believe Anthony was murdered and did not commit that crime." The people who likely knew Anthony best, his parents, say he was not capable of this killing and that he had no connection whatsoever to the Schmidts. Why would he violently attack them at sunrise? "We were told there was no motive and it was random," she said. Investigative matters aren't the only details that remain under wraps. Police won't even tell the Sherwins where in the park that their son's body was found. "Why can't we know where our son's last moments on Earth were so we can put a small cross and some flowers there?" Arlo Schmidt is being raised by extended family, according to reports from his hometown. There's a GoFundMe that has been set up for helping him, and I will link to that in the show notes. Cecilia Sherwin says she regularly thinks of the little boy who came running to her frantically for help at sunrise that morning, July 22nd, 2022. Cecilia Sherwin added that the family has cooperated fully with the police and investigative team from the get-go. "I didn't think we had any tears left, but we still find ourselves breaking down, and we care deeply for that little boy and the loss of his family. We just arrived home, and we're trying to absorb the loss of our son and arriving home without him, which is just unfathomable." So basically, there's only a couple possibilities here as to what could have happened. Either Anthony Sherwin killed the Schmidt family, or some unknown assailant killed all three of the Schmidts as well as Anthony Sherwin and got away with it. I've been researching and thinking and racking my brain a lot as to what could have happened, and I've come up with a couple possible scenarios. This is me just brainstorming here, but I wanted to get these thoughts out loud. Let me know what you guys think. But here's the first scenario. Anthony Sherwin, a young man with no history of violence or any mental health issues, a man who had just been camping through the Midwest for a week with his parents, and a man who his family says was happy, left his campsite early Friday morning. Cecilia and her husband Joe were out on an early morning walk, so they didn't hear any movement happening from their tent or Anthony's. He went into the locked box and he took the gun from it. He walked 75 yards over to the campsite next to him with the gun, and he ambushed the Schmidt family while they slept. Witnesses reported hearing 2 gunshots. Those shots struck Tyler and litlle. Tyler was also stabbed on top of being shot, and litlle was both shot and strangled. And Sarah was stabbed. Somehow, Arlo was able to escape from the tent while the commotion was going on. I believe that there would have been a lot of fighting happening in that tent during this time. Perhaps litlle could have been the target in this attack, and the parents may have been trying to protect their kids. Litlle was strangled, which takes a long time and a lot of force to accomplish, but it's unclear whether strangulation is what killed her or if it was the gunshot that was fatal. Maybe the tent was dimly lit during this attack, and perhaps Arlo thought he was seeing a man dressed all in black when he was really seeing Anthony Sherwin's green clothing. I actually went online and looked up what time the sun rose that morning. So on Friday, July 22nd, 2022, the sunrise was at 5:59 a.m. Cecilia Sherwin called 911 at 6:23 a.m. So it likely would have been pitch black in that tent just 24 minutes before 911 was called, and most likely whoever was in the tent was there while it was dark. Sherwin would have had to quickly flee the campsite after the gunshots went off because Arlo had already ran to go get help, and fellow campers heard the shots go off and they would be panicking soon. Nobody saw Anthony Sherwin running from the scene other than 9-year-old Arlo. Anthony Sherwin then ran for the woods where he took his own life. But reports state that Anthony Sherwin was shot twice. It would be rare for someone to have an opportunity to shoot themselves twice when trying to commit suicide. As his mother said after viewing the report, she thought that the first of those 2 gunshots would have been fatal in and of itself because it was really bad. So how could he then shoot himself a second time? Could the first shot have happened while he was still in the tent? Maybe Tyler shot him in the tent during a struggle? Well, no, because as I said before, the 2 gunshots in the tent hit Tyler and litlle. If Anthony Sherwin would have been seriously shot in the tent, how could he quickly flee the scene with nobody seeing him? There are just so many questions, and that's just the first scenario. Obviously, this is just me brainstorming, definitely not saying this is what happened. I'm just trying to figure this out. So in scenario 2, an unknown assailant is the killer, and this was Cecilia Sherwin's theory. She said her son was not capable of this kind of violence and that he would never do this. Well, to be fair, they all say this. Perhaps Cecilia and Joe Sherwin left their tent that morning for their early morning walk, leaving Anthony asleep in his tent. Anthony Sherwin awakens to the sound of a struggle in the campsite next to him. Cecilia had mentioned that they started carrying a gun while camping specifically due to the fact that they had some scary things happen other times they had camped, and they felt they needed a gun for more protection. So let's say Anthony Sherwin grabs the gun and runs over to the Schmidt's campsite and stumbles upon an assault taking place by a man all dressed in black. Sherwin tries to fight him off, but the assailant manages to overpower him and take his gun, shooting Tyler and litlle. Anthony Sherwin then either runs away and the murderer chases him into the woods and shoots him, or the killer flees into the woods and Anthony Sherwin chases him down. Sherwin catches him, a fight ensues, and the unknown person shoots Anthony, then gets away and is never found. Police assume it's a murder-suicide and case closed. But we don't know if the gun that killed Tyler and litlle is the same gun that killed Anthony Sherwin because police refuse to release this information, either to the Sherwin family or the public. The police also refused to disclose other details of the case, like where Sherwin's body was found in the woods, for instance. So there are a lot of questions. And although we seem to have a probable answer here, most likely this was a random murder and suicide, that's not a definitive fact. It's just our best guess, and our best guess leaves a lot of questions unanswered. What really happened that morning? What are the mysterious details surrounding Anthony Sherwin going missing from his parents' campsite? Where did he go in that time? Is the discrepancy between Arlo Schmidt's description of an assailant dressed all in black and the fact that Anthony Sherwin was wearing green, not black, significant? Was the child just misremembering what he saw? Did Anthony Sherwin murder the Schmidt family, or was it an unknown assailant all dressed in black? And did they get away undetected? Did Anthony Sherwin die of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, or was he also murdered? And was the gun that killed Anthony the same gun that killed the Schmidts? If the police are so sure that Anthony Sherwin killed the Schmidt family and the case is closed, then why do they still refuse to release the ballistics report detailing the weapons used in the murders? Why would they not just release that? Why would Anthony Sherwin, a man with no prior criminal history and no reports of a history of mental illness or violence, randomly murder the Schmidt family who he didn't know and had no connection with? There are just so many questions. What we do know is that the summer of 2022 brought about an unexpected, ugly tragedy to a place that is normally beautiful, the Maquoketa Caves State Park campground. In a single, seemingly ordinary morning at this peaceful venue, several innocent lives were tragically taken from us far too soon. Thank you so much for listening to this case. I know it was a tough one to listen to. It's very sad. It's really horrible. But I would love to know in the comments what you guys think. With all of the cases I talk about, there's usually some aspect of mystery, and I know this one seems really cut and dry, but there are a lot of unanswered questions. Until next time, lock your doors and stay safe out there. Bye-bye.